All right, coming at you all the way live from the lower bottoms of West Oakland. It's Soundwaves. And today I have special guest, editor, and senior columnist for the Black Agenda Report, and author of I'm going to say this so wrong. Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents. Margaret Kimberley.
I'm applauding too. Thank you.
I want everybody to get that Michael Buffer intro because great people deserve great intros. Hello?
Yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
there you go. I wasn't know if you were there. Okay. So your book, Prejudential, this is from the website. This book is an effort to shed light on the truth to the extent that our leaders embody aspects of who we are as a people, studying how each president has participated in our nation's complicated and often shameful treatment of Black people is a place as any to start.
Yes.
And then I do have to add this. There's a quote from Cornel West. Margaret Kimberley gives us an intellectual gem of prophetic fire about all the U.S. presidents and their deep roots in the vicious legacy of white supremacy and predatory capitalism. I love that. So
thank you very much.
When we think about the presidents, we definitely think the early ones are slave owners, right? From Washington and that first set, but you go into all of the presidents.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. 10 of the first 12 were slaveholding. And I think it's important to point that out for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's true, and we need to know it. But I think we need to know how and why anti-Black racism came to be foundational to this country. We have a country that was a settler colonial state, and the people called the founding fathers, the revolutionaries of that time, wanted to be free from British control so they could do what they wanted. Slavery couldn't be touched. They could expand as far as they wanted, which meant displacing and in some cases eliminating altogether the indigenous population and profiting from chattel slavery. So our nation's capital, I don't know how many people know this, but they created a new city. Washington was inaugurated in New York, which was the first capital. Then it moved to Philadelphia, further south. And then they created a new city wedged between Maryland and Virginia, safely in that region that depended more on slaveholding. So I think it's very important that we know these things. And yes, 10 of the first 12 were slaveholding. And then after that, it's a sad litany of presidents who, whatever their personal feelings were, all accommodated themselves to the racist founding of the country, all 45 of them to various degrees.
When we think of Abraham Lincoln, we think of him as the great emancipator.
Ha.
Is that a flawed perception? Is it a little deeper than that?
Much deeper than that. Lincoln was the Republican Party, which was the new party at the time, was founded to stop the spread of slavery, not to stop slavery itself necessarily, but to stop its spread. And Lincoln became president at this pivotal moment. The South, the Confederacy, gambled and took a chance that they could win the war. They're the ones who started it, lest we forget. Lincoln initially did not want to make the war a war about slavery. People who fled, who escaped to Union lines, were returned to their slaveholders. He famously said that his priority was keeping the Union, and if he could keep the Union by keeping slavery, he would do that. But if he could keep the Union by getting rid of slavery, he would do that. And he never gave up his goal of getting black people out of the country. So, we're always, if that's brought up at all, we're told, well, that's what he said in the beginning, but then he changed his ways and he stopped saying that. No, not true. As late as a week before he was assassinated, he again talked about how to get black people out of the country. He tied the Emancipation Proclamation to schemes they were called colonization plans to colonize black people out of the country. There was one such colony, didn't last long, in Haiti, a place called Ile La Vache off the coast of Haiti, and several hundred people were sent there. So that's what we need to know about Lincoln. And the same to various degrees is true about all the presidents who are considered to be good for black
Um, so we can look at Lincoln, the way you describe that kind of reminds me of the way we're talking about police reform.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about reforming it, not abolishing it, and not changing the system. So it's almost as if you were to use the way you're describing Lincoln is he's saying like we don't need to get rid of, kind of like what you're seeing with Congress with the kente cloth and everything, but still saying that we just need a few little reforms here and there, but the system is fine.
Well, they don't want to change anything, and these protests, this rebellion is I think has the ability to really change politics in a fundamental way. The whole country has been radicalized, and I think it was happening before the killing of George Floyd by the Minneapolis police. I think that was the last straw. You have a population living in a precarious existence, a political system devoted to not doing anything to help them. Along comes, so for example, we always hear about jobs growth and how many people are employed or unemployed. First of all, those numbers are always phony. Employment numbers only include those who are still receiving benefits. So if your benefits run out and you're not still haven't found a job, you're not included in the unemployment statistics. And the jobs growth is all low wage jobs and gig work. So it was always phony. And people were suffering before a minimum wage that hasn't gone up in years, even when Democrats were in control and had the power to change that. So then along comes the COVID-19 pandemic, and we see that we live in a failed state. We have, despite all our talk of living in an advanced country, we had a system that just showed how threadbare it is, with 100,000 people dying, containing the epidemic only by these quarantines, which have caused great damage to the economy, more than 30 million newly unemployed people. And then we see this killing. And a few weeks, maybe a month before, most people learned about Ahmaud Arbery's killing in Georgia and also saw that on video. So I think it was outrage on top of outrage. And I'm frankly surprised at the staying power of the protest, but it is all to the good. You can see the degree to which the politicians are deliberately disconnected from the people, that all they can offer is that silly stunt a couple days ago where they wore kente cloth and took a knee. They are not interested in responding to this very deep discontent that's in the country. And people are ready for significant changes of a variety of changes that better their lives, and they're not going to be mollified if these particular cops end up going to jail. People mean business, and there's talk of defunding police and getting rid of police and police abolition. These are mainstream views. But they have shown their hand too. They know that they're trying to keep a lid on the anger and frustration that millions of people feel. And that is why they resort to pretending to give us something when they, in fact, haven't done anything.
I call it political theater.
Yes, it's a great description.
It was disgusting to me because I don't know if you're a sports fan at all, but I know Colin Kaepernick's popularity became somewhat polarizing because of the political aspects of what he was protesting. I live here in the Bay Area. I've actually followed Kaepernick's career since his college days at the University of Nevada. And I never really saw his protest as that radical. I mean, let's keep in mind, he just sat down. I mean, the first thing he did was sit down during the national anthem. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the military gave the National Football League a ton of money to start playing the national anthem and doing all these flyovers and making it mandatory that the players came out. So for years, a lot of players never even came out for the national anthem. It was never even televised in football.
Right.
Until like 2008. So Kaepernick sitting down and then going so far as to when the sitting down became too polarizing for him, he literally met with a Green Beret and asked, well, what can I do that's just not offensive? And that's where the kneeling comes from. So the kneeling gesture to me is kind of even to show how non-offensive this gentleman was. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying he's definitely not Muhammad Ali by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, but when the power structure doesn't respond, they radicalize everyone. So he was, you see what they did is, because I remember most of my life, there was no, the players weren't out on the field, excuse me, when the anthem was played. And they do try to militarize everything, especially after 9/11. It was so annoying. In those days when I still was watching football, I would wait until, wait like 10 minutes so I didn't have to sit through that. But absolutely, he was trying to follow the rules. But the fact that he wanted it acknowledged, he wanted to recognize police violence and the anti-Black nature of police violence was too much. And so they tried to disappear him altogether. And but the result was radicalizing Black people. White people, of course, were angry. But now, now the NFL's trying to apologize. They shouldn't bother. They, at this point, if you try to say anything, trying to walk it back and apologize, it's insulting. But
I found it insulting. Yeah,
yes,
I agree with you.
It's absolutely insulting. So he deserves great credit for going out on a limb, and all those who did stand with him or actually kneel with him deserve great credit. People who step forward, who are the first one to step out and go out on that limb, always deserve support. But we've seen what happens when the system doesn't respond. They've now radicalized half the country. And that is a good thing. I think it's very important that the response to George Floyd's killing are radical responses right away. What are these? The people with the kente cloth kneeling. They've all said, "Oh no, the proposal to defund the police," which is somewhat problematic. It's more reformist than radical, actually, but even that is too much. So they have to be pushed. We cannot let these people. They can't even look at the Democrats. Look what they've done this year. Their first priority actually was defeating Bernie Sanders. I don't even think they care if they lose to Trump. Their priority was making sure that these very reformist proposals were dead in the water, and making sure that progressives got the message that we are doing nothing that you want, not even a tiny bit of it, and you can forget it and don't bring it up again. And I think those are a lot of the white people who are protesting. A lot of Sanders supporters were, I say they were all dressed up with nowhere to go. And, but they still wanted change. So I think they make up a large number of those who are publicly demonstrating their feelings.
Now, I want to circle back to prejudicial.
Prejudential, we're still calling it.
Prejudential.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The publisher and I made up the word, so I suppose you can pronounce it any way you want, but we're saying prejudential.
Prejudential. I like the word. I just can't say it right. So that's my fault. Now, I want to go over some of these presidents that people don't necessarily think of as being racist or having bad racial policies. FDR, the New Deal. We hear so much about him, so many good things about him. We get a lot of reforms during the New Deal. Where did he go wrong?
Well, he was who he was. He was, excuse me, lest we forget, at that time, the Democratic Party was the party of the segregated South. And Democratic presidents always avoided doing anything for Black people. Their excuse was always, but I need the South, but I need support from those members of Congress. And that was always what FDR said. For years, actually before and during his administration, a constant plea for anti-lynching legislation, for something to protect Black people from this terrorism. And that was always the response. My hands are tied. I can't do anything. Now, the New Deal programs were very important. Black people did benefit from them as much as they could. However, in one example, the Social Security Act did not apply to farm work or domestic work. Well, guess what Black people did at that time? Most Black people still lived in the South. Actually, most Black people now still live in the South. But even more at that point in history. So most of their labor wasn't covered under the Social Security Act. So that's an example. They get a lot of credit. It's the same thing because they weren't, he wasn't Hoover. He did do some things, and his wife was Eleanor Roosevelt was made friends with Black people, and at that time,
A. Philip Randolph, right?
Yes. She, her role in having Marian Anderson sing at the Lincoln Memorial, her friendship with Mary McLeod Bethune, this, went a long way with Black people who were so used to just being disappeared. But that's really all it was, a lot of photo ops. And so yeah, that's what we get with even the Roosevelts of the world.
Do you think, I don't know, did you do, Henry Wallace was FDR's VP, I think his last term, and actually I think he ran for the presidential seat for the Democratic Party and then lost to Truman. Do you think we would have seen a different Democratic Party had Wallace have won that election?
Well, that's why they dumped him. He was FDR's vice president that third term, and they did not want. FDR was very ill. There wasn't a lot of public acknowledgement of his illness, but there was an awareness that he might not survive that fourth term, and they wanted somebody else, so they got him off the ticket. And Wallace later ran as a progressive candidate. Harry Truman that's how they balanced the ticket, a northerner and a southern segregationist. And Truman was from Missouri. As a young man, he belonged to the Klan in the 1920s when many people belonged to the Klan. He tried to explain it away and claim that his life was threatened. He had to he didn't want to join the Klan, but he had to. But he grew up in Missouri, did not join the Confederacy, but was a slave state. All his grandparents were slaveholders. He many times expressed racist sentiment quite openly. He did, though, he just desegregated the military, but they knew in 1948, they knew he was facing a close election and that he needed the votes of black people in the North, that is to say, those black people who could vote. And so he desegregated the military, and he spoke about the need for civil rights protection, although it wasn't, excuse me, very far-reaching. And yes, and excuse me, A. Philip Randolph, again, the little bit that FDR did is because A. Philip Randolph threatened to march on Washington if he. So FDR passed some, rather tepid legislation regarding work in defense industries in response. But Randolph had to do the same thing again. So so that's what we get even with these supposedly good presidents. And I want to just tell a story about Truman after he left office in the early 60s when the sit-ins at lunch counters began. And he said publicly, if I owned a business and someone did that, I'd throw them out. And he added, and you can quote me. So he said, Negroes need to learn to behave themselves. So that was Harry Truman. Yes, he did.
Wow. Oof.
Yes.
Hey there, Harry. Another president. This is fun for me. I hope you're having fun with this because I'm having a ball. We all know about Richard Nixon. Everyone knows Tricky Dick.
Yeah.
I was born in 1977 and knew who Richard Nixon was. Gerald Ford. What is Gerald Ford's legacy?
He's one of the only president who was unelected. He was vice president. It's very funny. Nixon's first vice president, Agnew, had to resign. Ford became vice president, and then Nixon had to resign. So this unelected man was president very briefly from the time Nixon resigned in August of 1974, and but he lost to Jimmy Carter in 1976, so only 2 years. But he was typical of Republicans. As I was saying, it was the Democrats who were the party of the segregated South. So Ford would make, friendlier statements about black people earlier in his political career. But once that change came about, and at that time, the hot issue was busing, regarding school desegregation and busing. And he said he was against busing. He said that discrimination in private institutions, excuse me, was okay. Then he had to backtrack from making that statement. So he was pretty much in keeping with the political turn that had taken place at that time. And that's when the Republicans became the party, the white people's party. Nixon won in 1968, promising law and order. In other words, I'm shutting down this movement. And Ford continued in that vein.
Now, Lyndon Johnson, during his term, we get the Fair Housing Act and the Civil Rights Act, and was it 1965?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But he was not the man of the black people that we probably think he is. Do you feel that's the way a lot of people are looking at Joe Biden at this point? Like he's a person that, even though he has a horrible record when it comes to the black community, he can be moved like LBJ to put in policy?
Well, LBJ was moved by a mass movement. I don't think we can underestimate the degree to which the positive changes you mentioned, the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act and fair housing legislation, all of those things were created because the people rose up and created a political crisis that Johnson had to respond to. That is what happened. So the people should get the credit and not these politicians who always try to take the path of least resistance. So that's what all of them were about. Biden is horrible, but since that time, we've had a diminution of black politics, and by that I mean a politics that asserts that black people have a particular history and needs that the political system should address. But now we've been told that we can't talk about that at all. Then Obama was president, and so that was supposed to resolve everything. You have a black president. So now black politics amounts to little more than keeping Republicans out of office. So we ended up with Joe Biden because, as I said, their first priority was getting rid of Bernie Sanders. So they coalesced around Biden, who is horrible for so many reasons. His history, as he brags about his role in passing the crime bill in 1994 that put so many thousands of black people in jail. He has a long history of making racist remarks. He's the right wing of the Democratic Party. He said, someone reported him saying at a fundraiser that he said nothing will fundamentally change if, he said to the rich fat cats, nothing will fundamentally change if I'm the president. So he told us what he is about. He also is not well physically. I'm a lay person. I'm hesitant to say what is going on with him, but he's not a healthy man either. So the Democrats have put forward this man who has no business running for a variety of reasons, but he's not Trump. And they're trying to get away with foisting him on us by anybody who asks a question, anybody who didn't want him as the nominee. The first thing you're told is, well, do you want Trump? At least he's not Trump. We've got to get rid of Trump. And these are the same people who 4 years ago insisted that Hillary Clinton was electable. But Trump is the one in the White House. So I don't know, everybody has serious case of amnesia. It's very interesting to me that nobody is willing to bring this up, but that is their MO. We have to keep Republicans out. You can't question anything. If you didn't vote in 2016, it's your fault Trump is president. Nobody blames the people who put forward Hillary Clinton and then failed to even do a decent get out the vote effort. I don't know why they're never blamed for Trump being president. But yeah, that's the situation we find ourselves in right now.
Side note, me personally, I think Trump is done. I think that his mishandling of coronavirus is akin to Hoover's mishandling of the bonus march. And I just think there's too much blood on his hands, and anybody could run against him at this point. Unfortunately, they picked Joe Biden, who is rumored to be looking at Condoleezza Rice as his VP candidate.
Well, two things. I'm less convinced that Trump is done.
Really?
I believe, yes. First of all, I think everyone, let's not forget that he wasn't supposed to win in 2016. But there were millions of people, 60 million of them to be exact, who didn't care what the Republican establishment wanted, didn't care what the press thought. They went right in that voting booth and voted for him. I don't see any reason why people who voted for him in 2016 won't vote for him again. And he won, lest we forget, the Electoral College victory. One of the many reasons people ought to be angry with Democrats is that Hillary Clinton only needed 78,000 votes in 3 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, in order to win the Electoral College. And the lack of a get out the vote effort and Trump's appeal to white racism put him over the top, and he was able to eke out this victory. All those people who came out for him will come out for him again. The mishandling, as you put it, of COVID-19, what do we see? Republicans saying it was no big deal. We need to reopen the economy. I mean, there's a political divide on this medical issue and this failure to contain it. So I don't see any reason to believe why the people who voted for him before won't vote for him again. I don't see Biden. You have to have uh, a candidate who generates some excitement. There are many people, millions of people who are not highly motivated voters. And they don't,
Hmm.
for a variety of reasons, they don't care that much. But they will come out if they think that something new is happening. So there were black people, and I'm not saying that black people don't vote, but there is a significant enough number of people who were disengaged from the system who came out for him in 2008 and 2012. They came out for him. That's why they didn't come out for Hillary Clinton, and that's why she lost. What was she saying? And we can't forget this. What did she say that was unique? What did she give as a reason why people should vote for her? And it was basically, well, if you like Obama, I'm Obama's third term, and if you voted for him, you should vote for me. And I'm sure the people who voted for him did vote for her, but some of those people did not vote at all. And that is a lesson that we should remember this time around. Joe Biden is whatever his problem is. He has problems answering questions. He can't read the teleprompter. I think he's drugged, quite frankly. I think they give him something and he's alert for like a day, but then he has to take a week off or something. I mean, in the midst of this crisis, he was largely absent. I mean, even saying he couldn't have public events, he could have been on video every day. Why wouldn't you
Hmm.
be? So I'm less certain that Trump's missteps will sink him. I don't think we can underestimate the devotion to him on the part of his people, and I don't think we can underestimate the degree to which the people who need to come out for Biden will in fact come out for him. I don't think that's a sure thing. So I think it's entirely possible that Trump can win again.
I will say this. As a touring musician, I spend a lot of time in the middle of the country, and I play heavy, loud, punky metal music. So I'm a black man constantly around angry white people. And in 2012, I definitely saw the anger. 2012 was the first time I was scared to go out of the bubble of the Bay Area of California, and into the center of the country, because there was just so much anger. So I totally understood
Did
Trump
you mean
winning in 2016.
2016, or did you mean?
That wasn't a surprise to me. 2012 was when I saw it. The second Obama term, people were pissed.
Oh, you did. Okay.
I would walk in, I would walk into certain towns and just get some real gnarly looks, uh, Miss Kimberly, like you wouldn't believe. Um, that being said, I have made, and this is all anecdotal. I don't have any numbers.
Okay. Well, that's as
Um,
good as experts, frankly.
a lot of my friends who actually were Trump voters totally jumped ship. Totally jumped ship on the way the coronavirus thing was handled, because it just put such a monkey wrench into their life.
Okay.
I definitely think the fringe is what we see, because the fringe talks the loudest, i.e. the Tea Party, right?
Hmm.
That fringe is just so loud, and we start to think that that's the majority, and it can't become the majority. We can project that to become the majority. I don't think it is. I think there's a lot of people that just want him out. But to your point, I think this might be one of the lowest turnouts we will have seen in a lot of years, because so many people are just so disaffected by it all. That's
Yeah.
just my
Yeah.
lay opinion.
So those people, but here's the question,
Hmm.
and I'm not expecting either one of us to be able to answer it. Those people who are angry about the way he handled coronavirus, are they going to vote for Biden? That's the question.
That that's the funny part. So I get messages from time to time from people. So after Bernie dropped out, and Bernie radicalized more people than I even thought.
Yes, he did.
And I'm talking people that I know that are these strong Second Amendment cats that were real pro Trump. They jumped on the Bernie train. real quick after the losses started to come down with the Trump administration, and the financial losses, the loss of jobs, having everything shut down around them. And when Bernie dropped out, they were like, "What do I do? I don't want to vote for Joe Biden. Who should I vote for?" I'm like, "Hey, man, I live in California. I can't. I don't want to have that burden on me." But I understand where they were coming from, because they just didn't want to vote for Donald Trump. They didn't think another year of this unhinged man. Like, another thing that we got to see with Donald Trump is this guy that we've never seen it. Even Reagan had years as a governor walk right out of television into the White House. And we pretty much got what you thought you were going to get with a dude that was a joke of a reality show celebrity and whatever the hell that is. As a president, the reality show president acts like the reality show president. He doesn't really understand how the Constitution works. He doesn't understand his powers or his role. I mean, the other day he was talking about how he was going to stop all this defunding the police talk, just him, because he's got the grand authority. Like, he just doesn't get it. He constantly is embarrassing himself, and he's just he's putting some ghouls into his cabinet that might even be worse than the Obama administration when it comes to a cabinet.
Well, it's interesting. It's those are good points. I do think, though, that I think Biden is a problem. Now, we'll see when
Oh,
the
yeah.
campaign gets underway, when he is able to make large public appearances. We'll see what that means. Um, I I live in New York, and I had been voting for the Green Party for a long time. I said, if you live in a solid blue state or solid red state, vote for who you want. You don't have to vote for the Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
But then I officially became a member of the Green Party, and I'm committed to building a real left. We need a real left party, a real workers' party, a real peace party. Um, and so I have given up on the Democrats. But to your point about Bernie Sanders, that's exactly why when they said Sanders can't win, it was just the opposite. They knew he could. They knew
Mm-hmm.
that for all of the supposed conservatism of white America, they would utilize Medicare for all. You think they wouldn't? Their kids need college student loan relief. So
Mm-hmm.
sure, excuse me. So the appeal of what he was talking about was broad based, but that's why they didn't want him. They want their donor class, the Mike Bloombergs, and remember his stunt with his short-lived campaign. But he's taken over
Yes.
the Democratic Party. He's given them money, and they have made it clear we're not allowing any of this to be discussed. And uh, so I'm sure you're absolutely right. They knew Bernie Sanders could win. That's why he had to go. But now we have this president who, but I don't know. The people in 2016, they knew what he was like. Is he really that different from the person he showed himself to be? And he still got enough votes to be able to squeeze out a victory in the electoral college. So I'm unsure. If the Democrats had a better candidate, I would agree with you. But I mean, we'll all find out in November. But I will not be surprised if we get Trump again.
But there's this thing about, like, I don't know yet, because we didn't know what Trump had to offer, and he did take a lot of Bernie Sanders rhetoric against Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton had something uh, that Trump didn't have at that time, which was a record, and an odious record at that. Trump has something he didn't have last time, which is a record. We didn't know. He's a reality show guy. Maybe he is smart because he's a business owner. Regardless of how many hit pieces have come out since then, and I think the New York Times did a 10,000 word expose on the Trump family and how they even got their money, which is really disgusting. none of this mattered because people just wanted to see what the reality show guy was going to do because he didn't have a political record. His political record shows that he just sucks.
Well, we can, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm less. I'm just remembering 2016. I thought Hillary Clinton would win. I had no idea that she and her people had so badly botched the turnout effort. Obama had a great voter outreach campaign, and that's why he won those states that flipped. And the fact that she didn't think she needed to campaign, or even if she wasn't going to show up in Wisconsin, that they needed a great get out the vote effort. They need a kick-ass get out the vote effort. They've got to protect the black vote. They've got to stop voter suppression. I'm unconvinced that they're going to do all of those things. So we shall see. But I'm just remembering 2016 and the I realized later, false confidence I had. Um, I also think we can't believe these polls. I remember, a few days before Election Day in 2016, the New York Times said she has a 90% chance of winning or something like that. So I don't know what it means. So I'm reading now that polls show Biden ahead, but I don't know what these polls mean. I can't.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should just trust them. So I think it's pretty much up in the air, and it's hard to make predictions.
Back to the book. I'm going through a list of presidents because, again, I'm having a ball doing this. I hope you're enjoying yourself because I am really enjoying myself going through this list of presidents with you. And also, side note, when the world opens back up again, and if you have some free time, I would love to have you jump in the van with us and come on a little excursion on tour. We definitely go through New York City, but to take you to some of these places in the middle of the country, I think you'd be very surprised.
Okay.
It'll give you an idea on the pulse of the real America, the heartland.
That's okay. I've seen it. I'm not sure I want to see it. I don't know if I want to. I'm going to take your word for it. I don't know if I the heartland.
Now, George W. Bush, I call him Junior,
right,
won
Bush
the election in 43. Yeah. He won the election in 2000, very contested election. Al Gore was who we thought would have been president. Do you think much would have changed under Al Gore?
It's hard to say. I don't think he would have invaded Iraq. It's so funny. It's hard to say. I think a different administration might have stopped 9/11. Everybody acted like, everybody coalesced around Bush. There was never any investigation of the failures that led to that attack, which led to the invasion of Iraq. And that's why I think we all need to be suspicious about, skeptical at the very least of everything we're told about it. But let's also be clear that election was stolen. So they kept black people from voting in Florida. They took enough black people off the rolls to give him that state, and they stole the election from Al Gore. So that's the first thing I think that always needs to be said about Bush. And these people now who want to rehabilitate him just disgust me. He killed 1 million people in Iraq. So that's two things. You steal an election, you kill 1 million people. I don't care that you are not as big an idiot as Donald Trump. I'm not going to say anything good about it. And Colin Powell a couple of days ago said he'd never vote for Trump because Trump is such a liar. And I'm like, but dude, you lied at the United Nations and got, 1 million people killed. So you can sit down too. But so yes, that election was stolen. Now, what would have happened if Gore had been president? It's a good question. I think we don't know. We really don't know. And in general, Democrats are the best thing you can say about having a Democratic president is that you get better judicial nominees, and the president plays a huge role in that regard. So that would have been better. You would have had a better class of black person in charge of things, but we don't know. Um, we don't know what he would have done. So it's hard to say. It really is difficult to say.
Now, following Bush Jr. is our first black president, Barack Hussein Obama. What are our lessons from Barack Obama? Now, whenever I say something bad about Barack Obama to anybody black, I get looked at as if I'm a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
And I am not, by any
Tell
stretch of
me
the
about it.
imagination.
Welcome to my world. Yes, I know.
I have a coworker that had a Michelle Obama purse. And I saw it and I was like, is that Michelle Obama on your purse? She was like, yeah, you got a problem with it? And I was like, you know what? I don't know the woman. She seems like a nice lady. she's hyper intelligent. Their kids seem awesome. I don't have any problem with her as a person. Tell us about Barack Obama, please.
Well, he was a typical president. He did what presidents do. The fact that black people, we got it from every direction from him because many white people were enraged just that a black man was president and didn't like him for that reason. So people would come to his defense against the Mitch McConnells of the world. But he did nothing for us. And because it was, nobody can ever go wrong by scolding black people and criticizing us. And Obama did that all the time. He still does. Black men are irresponsible. Cousin Pookie jokes, all of that. His throwing his own former pastor under the bus and calling him a crazy old man, pretty much calling him a crazy old man. So we didn't get anything out of him except being happy to see him. If you ask anybody what did you get out of Obama, they'll say Obamacare. But that's it. Which
Really
the best thing about Obamacare, by the way, was the Medicaid expansion. Everybody else had the right to buy insurance that's too expensive. So, and he did what the rest of them do. Bush's tax cuts for rich people were supposed to be temporary, and he made them permanent. The war against Libya, he destroyed this African nation and consigned people there to being the targets of racist attack, to a place where there's open slavery. That's what he and Hillary Clinton did. So he tried to do the same thing to Syria. Unfortunately, they were stopped. Fortunately, Russia came in on Syria's side. That's a good thing. That's a whole other discussion. So we didn't get anything out of him. I saw a tweet this morning. Somebody said Biden says he's going to choose a woman as his running mate, and black people are insisting that it be a black woman. And this tweet says, what's the big deal about wanting a black vice president? We had a whole black president and have nothing to show for it. So
yep.
I agree with that person. And but that's all we got out of him. And black politics was really set back by his presence because we were told we didn't need black politics. Just having a black politician in this high office was a good enough reason to be happy. And it didn't matter that our concerns were not acknowledged. I mean, and we're talking now about police violence. He didn't do anything about it. Let's be clear. The president has the Justice Department at his disposal. There's a civil rights division. They can prosecute these cops. If these local prosecutors don't get these cops, the federal government can. He could have prosecuted the cop who killed Eric Garner, who killed Tamir Rice. He could have prosecuted the guy who killed Trayvon Martin. All of it could have been done by him. And when people in Baltimore rose up when a man named Freddie Gray was killed by the police, he called the protesters thugs. And when he was asked, do you really want to use the word thug? He doubled down and said, yes, absolutely. So that's what we got from him. And he won't disappear, though. He's still the leader of the Democratic Party. He played a huge role in coalescing support around Joe Biden. So if Biden does lose, it's on him, too.
Now, Bill Clinton was supposed to be a friend of the black people. I don't know if people here that are listening remember when he was running. He was on Arsenio Hall playing the saxophone. People used to always joke he was the first black president. I don't know what that means to this day. Um, what is Bill Clinton's legacy when it comes to us?
Well, he's very conservative. But he showed us that during his campaign. That's the danger of saying any blue will do. He left the campaign trail to sign an execution warrant for a mentally disabled black man, the Sister Souljah moment, where he embarrassed Jesse Jackson. He had this horrible photo op with black prisoners as a backdrop. He told us where he was, but we weren't supposed to question any of that because at least he's a Democrat. You got to have a Democrat. Then when he gets into office, yeah, and the other thing the ruling class do, they wait for Democrats to get in. So Bush 41 couldn't get NAFTA passed, that first trade deal that was so terrible for workers. But Clinton's the one who could get it passed. He's the one who consolidated the media. There used to be hundreds of media companies, but basically now anything you watch or listen to is controlled by one of just 6 companies. He deregulated financial services, and that resulted in the crash in 2008, where black people lost what little wealth they had. So he was pretty horrible, and so was his wife. You know, they schemed all these years for her to be president, and then when it was her turn, she messed it up. Um, because she had serious, everybody wants to act like the issue with her emails was not a big thing. It was a very, very serious legal problem. I think it's one of the reasons she lost. I think she spent that year more concerned with her legal problems than with the campaign. And that's when they made up the Russiagate fraud to cover up for their failure. So that's the legacy of the Clintons for black people.
Jimmy Carter, Mr. Habitat for Humanity.
Now, yeah, well, out of all the former presidents, he's the one who has the best ex-presidency, because the rest of them give speeches and get paid $500,000, and Jimmy Carter just, he's building houses, and he said, I can't believe he's still alive. He had cancer; it was supposed to be terrible.
Yeah.
As of right now, he's still with us. Um, but he too, in the 70s, he made comments against busing. He said that people shouldn't want, how did he put it, alien a presence in their neighborhoods. In other words, he was in favor of segregation. So he was the beginning of this conservative Democrat, the first Democrat after LBJ to be elected. But it was once again conservative. It was ethnic purity. I see nothing wrong with ethnic purity being maintained. I would not force racial integration on a neighborhood by government action.
Oh,
So that was him. And he won because the turn from the Democrats to the Republicans being the white people's party had not happened yet. And so white Southerners voted for him. But that was the last time they voted for a Democrat. When Reagan ran, they got the real deal. Somebody going to Mississippi talking about states' rights. And so that he was the last one to get white Southerners to vote for a Democrat. And
where the civil rights workers were killed too. That's where he did it.
Absolutely, yes. What better place to make the statement? So that's what we got from him. So it's 45 sad stories, but I think it's important for people to read the book. For obvious reasons, I want people to buy it. But we have to change these narratives of presidents are these, outsized figures in our lives. Their faces on the money. Everything's named after them. Schools, colleges, cities, states are named after them. Founding fathers, the Capitol's named after the first president. But we have to stop worshiping them, and we have to be accustomed to hearing these things about them, so we can think for ourselves. and be unafraid. Most people, I think, want to have positive feelings about their country. But you can be positive about people who fought against the things that these guys upheld. Uh, and people want to have heroes and they want to admire someone. So nobody wants to hear that, oh, Lincoln was a racist dog. People, they want to think there was at least one guy who wasn't like that. But I say if there's a white man from the 1800s you want to admire, it ought to be John Brown, who was attempting to start a slave insurrection. And in so doing, even though that failed and he was captured and executed, he's the one who lit the match that started the Civil War, which was the only way slavery was going to end in this country, with the military defeat of the slaveocracy. So we've got to get used to this. I don't know if you've seen in the news that people all over the world are questioning the adherence to this racist narrative. In Belgium, they're taking down statues of King Leopold, the man who killed millions of people in the Congo.
Yes.
They threw us.
Yes.
I'd never heard of this man, Colston, in Britain, who was a major slave trader, became very wealthy in Bristol, England. People dumped his statue in the water. People even defaced Winston Churchill's statue, and they should have.
Mm-hmm.
He's a horrible man. So that's something we need to start doing here. But people have to have the information in order to make those assessments. So that is why I'm recommending that people buy my book.
I'm recommending people buy your book.
Absolutely.
I'm firing off random presidents here, and you got information on all of them off the top of the head.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. You spend several weeks writing and talking about it. So now there were people I knew nothing about before I started this. Chester Arthur. I knew there was a president named Chester Arthur. What the hell did he do? What did he have to do with black people? But, there's something to say about all of them, more for some, less for others. But this is much needed history, and people need to grow up. And, Americans love to ask other countries what they've done about facing their past. The Germans atoned for the Holocaust. The Japanese tell the truth about what they did in World War II. Well, what about this country? What about this country where that was founded on genocide and is maintained by the racism that is inevitable in a country that's founded that way? What do Americans say? So time to put up or shut up, time to stop pointing fingers, time to be honest about your own backyard.
I agree. Before we go, is there anything that you would like to promote outside of your book? Any shows you're going to be on coming up?
Sure. Well, I always ask people to read Black Agenda Report. Today's Wednesday at blackagendareport.com. We publish every week from a Black left perspective. I'm on Twitter at my handle is Freedom Ride Blog, and I'm on Patreon, patreon.com/Margaret Kimberley. You can get everything for $5. So yes, that's my recommendation.
Kente cloth charlatans, you called Congress, and I love it. Kente cloth charlatans. I love it.
Pretty much.
I'm going to put a link to your current article in Black Agenda Report, as well as the buy link to your book. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me this morning. I'm going to play some music, and don't hang up.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.